Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm reviewing Squid Girl. Now, before I start discussing my opinions of Squid Girl, let me just give the basic premise of the series. So, we're introduced to our lead character, Squid Girl, and she declares herself to be the emissary of the sea, the invader of the land, that she will subjugate mankind and punish them for the sin of polluting her ocean. So she ends up on a beach. She invades, in quotation marks, a restaurant called the Lemon House, run by these two other girls on the cover. She breaks a wall, basically causing a hole in it, and she ends up working at the restaurant in order to pay off the reparation cost. And throughout the, adventures, she gets introduced to a lot of other weird characters. So, what is my opinion of the series? Well, let me just break it down into certain elements. So, let's start off with the characters themselves. So, our lead character, Squid Girl, what is my opinion of her? She's fine. She's, how can I put it? She's fixated on the idea of her being an invader, but she ends up not being very dangerous, being quite tame, being quite friendly with a lot of the inhabitants of the land. And there are many other characters. You have Eiko, which is the girl who basically is the straight guy, one could say, the serious one. We have Chizuru, she's a bit of a, how can I put it? She's one of those characters where she's incredibly powerful, but she doesn't act like it. We have their brother Takeru, who, is another child for Squid Girl to play with. We're introduced to many other characters then. You have the, pervert girl who's completely and utterly in love with Squid Girl. You have the researcher who thinks she's an alien. You have the lifeguard who is in love with Chizuru, etc., etc. And the thing about all the characters is that they're fairly plain and one-dimensional, which at one time I might have thought would have been okay for a comedy, but as proven in many other comedy series, with examples being Ouran High School Host Club and K-On!, characters don't need to be one-dimensional when it's a comedy. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that K-On! Is, a feast of character development or original characters, etc., etc., but they are at least multi-layered to an extent, whereas these characters are rather flat. Now, how is the comedy itself? The comedy in Squid Girl, one approach that I did like is the fact that each episode is broken up into 3 mini-episodes, each approximately 7 minutes long. And I like that approach in comedy because it means that if you are not liking how one story is progressing, it'll just move on to another story, which you might like more. So that is a nice approach and a nice touch. The comedy itself is kind of very slice of life, considering the fact that our lead character is kind of a supernatural entity, a girl who is capable of moving stuff with her, hair, which is actually tentacles, of shooting out squid ink, of making herself light up, etc., etc. The comedy is very slice of life. Very much so. Very reminiscent of K-On!, actually. And I believe K-On! Actually does its humour better. So that is a bit of a flaw, in my opinion. A lot of the jokes are cliche. As I said before, you have the girl who's a complete nut for Squid Girl, and she is there to put Squid Girl in some weird clothing at the beginning, to get repeatedly struck by Squid Girl as she runs at Squid Girl. You have the kind of very standard slice of life of Squid Girl doing something to annoy Eiko, which it's kind of amusing at first, but then it kind of gets old quite fast. I will admit though, one joke that I was not expecting, which actually made me roaring laugh, half from the fact that it was actually very funny and half from embarrassment that I was laughing at it. It was basically the researcher that I mentioned, the one that believes that Squid Girl is an alien. At one point gets picked up by Squid Girl, by the tentacles, Squid Girl, shoots the squid ink at her, because Squid Girl's really annoyed at this point. And the researcher then suddenly says, getting touched by many, many tentacles, getting covered in weird fluids. Oh, my dream has finally come true. And I was just thinking, God, you just referenced a tentacle rape in a 12 series. So, I was quite laughing at that, although that was half out of embarrassment. So overall, the comedy is okay in the series. The animation and the art style is okay again. The art is kind of simple, plain, clean character designs, but nothing particularly original. The animation, likewise, it's simple. There's nothing particularly complex in the animation. At some point, there's some choppy animation, but overall, it's an okay animation. I don't know which animation studio did this. The voice acting now, I watched this in the English dub, and the English dub itself is actually very good, with one kind of exception. Basically, Squid Girl talks in what one calls squid talk, and what that amounts to is some horrifically bad puns. What I mean by that is, she'll, for example, when she first invades the restaurant, she calls what she's doing an inkvasion. And, she'll say, I'm inking about something, I'm thinking about something. And I'm feeling very squiddy, which is like silly. And at first, it's one of those, you really cringe at how utterly awful those puns are. But after a while, you kind of get over it. You kind of start to kind of not even notice it. So when the characters actually finally begin to acknowledge the fact that she's talking in this weird kind of dialect, one could say, near the end of the series, it comes as a bit of a kind of a surprise, like, oh wait, these characters are aware of how she's talking, so I do find that quite annoying. I'm not entirely sure if the puns are as bad in the original Japanese, or are they actually more clever, but definitely that is something that does take a bit of time to get used to. Besides that, the vocal performances are actually very good. The lead in this, I can't remember her name, but she voiced Azusa in K-On! In the English dub, which again brings the whole K-On! Comparison again. So in conclusion, what do I think of this series? It's an okay series. It's fine, it's kind of amusing, but it's something that I think has been done a lot better in other stuff, and if you're kind of interested in seeing a comedy, particularly a comedy that is kind of slice of life like this, two other series I can recommend you would be K-On!, which I believe has taken the, cute girls doing cute stuff as basically as perfect as it can be. It's not really going to get much better than that, unless they throw in far more dramatic elements. And Ouran High School Host Club, which is probably the best anime comedy I've seen. Now, this is the manga entertainment edition of this. I believe it uses the same master as the Australian version. And the special features on this, you have some OVA mini episodes, which are actually quite amusing. Again, they're not anything particularly special, but they are, a nice little thing to throw in. They are Japanese only, which is why I took mention to notice that this is the manga entertainment version and the Madman version. I'm not sure if the American edition includes them. I would have thought if it did that they would have dubbed it. It contains the standard textless opening and closing, an interview with the Japanese voice actress who portrayed Squid Girl, and hat folding, which I'm assuming has something to do with her hat. I have not actually seen that yet. So, a decent amount of extras, nothing special, but a nice little extra. So, overall, it's a okay series. Follow the recommendations I make, and if you find this for really, really cheap, like maybe less than a tenner, yeah, I guess you could, but I would still kind of recommend, you could probably put that to something better. But it's kind of harmless, Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.